Hello everyone, welcome to Active Vegeta, and today I will tell you the story Around the World in 80 Days by Jules Verne. The story starts like this. Here's your newspaper, sir. Thank you. Well, without any guards, what do they expect? Thought Phileas Fogg. He continued reading his paper as other members of the Reform Club sat playing cards, talking and drinking the best tea in London. The sound of their conversation did not bother him. Although Fogg was a rich and respected Englishman like the others, he was very different from them. He was a handsome man in his early 40s who liked routine. He liked to sit alone in the same armchair, in the same room, at the same time every day. His routine never changed. But today's news would change Phileas Fogg's life forever. Several hours passed, and after dinner, some other members entered the reading room. Thomas Flanagan, a businessman, was talking about the latest news. Any news about the robber? He'll never escape. The police told me that their best detectives are all over the city and the rest of the world looking for him, said Gauthier Ralph, one of the directors of the Bank of England. Have they got a description? Asked Andrew Stuart, an engineer. At that point, Fogg folded his newspaper, placed it on the table beside him, and joined the conversation. The Daily Telegraph says that a well-dressed gentleman was in the paying room when the money disappeared. A description of him was then given to the detectives. Ralph nodded. I am sure they'll get him. There's a reward of £2,000. Any detective would be eager to catch him for that kind of money. But then it won't be easy for him, even if he gets out of the country. Where could he go? Where could he hide? Asked Stuart. Lots of places. Fogg believed nothing was impossible. There are many places he could go. Traveling is faster and easier these days. The world is getting smaller. Just today, the Telegraph has an article which says it's possible to travel around the world in only 80 days. They even show the exact route. Fogg showed them the article, but Stuart only laughed. Yes, of course, traveling is a lot faster now, Fogg, but around the world in 80 days? It's impossible. What about bad weather and railway accidents? There are hundreds of problems that could stop you. Now the others began to laugh too. Fogg was a proud man, and their laughter made him angry. He stood up and looked at them. I'll bet you I can do it. I'd like to see you, and I'll bet you £4,000 that you can't. And I'll bet you 20,000 that I can. Fogg's friends looked at each other. It was a lot of money. They went and talked about it in a corner of the room. When they agreed that Fogg could not win, Stuart turned to him. We accept. Fogg looked at them calmly. Excellent. Today is Wednesday, 2nd October 1872. The train to Dover leaves at 8:45 p.m. I will be on it, and I'll be back in this room on Saturday 21st December at 8:45 p.m. After a trip around the world. Good night, gentlemen. Fogg marched out of the room and left the Reform Club for his home. Fogg's valet was shocked to see his master arrive home so early. Jean Passepartout was a young Frenchman with curly brown hair and a moustache. Although he was rather new in his position with Mr. Fogg, he knew that if his master said he would be home at midnight, as he was every night of his life, he meant exactly at midnight and not a minute before or after. Passepartout, we are catching the 8:45 to Dover. Don't pack any bags. We are traveling light. What do you mean, sir? We are going around the world in 80 days. Bring my traveling coat. Passepartout was too shocked to speak. He simply did as his master told him. He rushed upstairs, thinking about the many kinds of job he had in the past. When he was still in France, a singer, a firefighter, a teacher of gymnastics, even a circus acrobat. He was so tired of traveling from place to place. He took the job with Fogg, hoping to work in a normal, stable home where life was as regular as clockwork. Until now, he thought he had. With a long face, Passepartout carried out the order while his master prepared for the journey. Fogg took £20,000 from his safe and put the money in a small traveling bag. He also packed the Daily Telegraph, which showed their route, and a guidebook with the timetables they would need for the trains and ships. When Passepartout returned, Fogg gave him the bag. This is everything we need, including £20,000. Take care of it. Passepartout nervously took the bag and followed his master into a cab for Charing Cross railway station. Following the route in the Daily Telegraph, Fogg and Passepartout took the boat from Dover to France, then a train to Brindisi in Italy, and from there a boat, the Mongolia to Suez, Egypt. The news of Fogg's adventure was in all the newspapers, and his picture appeared all over England. Soon everyone was talking about whether or not Fogg would win his bet. The whole country was excited, but Fogg seemed as cool and calm as he was on any other day. He didn't even leave his cabin to enjoy the view. He simply stayed inside and carefully wrote the details of the journey in his notebook. A week later, on 9th October, the busy harbor at Suez was crowded with sailors, other foreign travelers, and men selling fruit, drinks, and other goods. They were all rushing around as busy as bees. On this sunny day, a thin man with a narrow face and a small moustache stood waiting near the dock. His name was Fix, Detective Fix, and he was waiting for the arrival of the Mongolia. Fix was one of many detectives sent to different ports and railway stations around the world to catch the London bank robber, and he wanted both the reward and the fame. When he saw Fogg's picture in the newspaper and read about the bet, he decided that Fogg must be the gentleman who robbed the bank 10 days earlier. He thought the bet was a clever way to escape. After all, the police description of the robber was too much like Fogg's picture to be an accident. The Mongolia arrived at 11 a.m. To make a 4-hour stop for coal, Fix soon noticed a man who looked lost and worried. The man walked up to Fix. "Excuse me, can you tell me where the passport office is?" He showed Fix a passport with the photograph of the man he was waiting for. Fix tried to hide his excitement. The man in front of Fix was PASSEPARTOUT, and the passport belonged to Fogg. "My master wants to get his passport stamped without getting off the boat. We are going to Bombay, you see." "Well, I am sorry, but your master must go to the passport office himself." "Oh dear, he won't be happy about that." "Well, I'd better go and tell him." PASSEPARTOUT sighed and went back to the boat. Fix smiled with satisfaction. Fix rushed to the passport office. He hoped to delay Fogg until he could get permission from police headquarters to arrest him. So he asked the passport officer not to stamp Fogg's passport. The officer shook his head. "If his passport is genuine, I will stamp it. I will not refuse to do so just because you think he might have robbed a bank." So Fix had to watch from a corner of the office as Fogg and PASSEPARTOUT got their passports stamped. He sent a telegram to London asking for a warrant for Fogg's arrest in Bombay. He then bought a ticket and followed Fogg and PASSEPARTOUT onto the Mongolia. Fix saw PASSEPARTOUT alone on the ship and went to talk to him. He hoped to win the valet's trust so that he could learn more about Fogg. "Hello again, my name's Fix. I am a businessman and I am going to Bombay too." The two men talked as they watched the sea go by. PASSEPARTOUT was not very good at keeping secrets, and Fix learned everything about their journey, including the amount of money they were carrying. Now Fix was sure he was following the right man. The Mongolia reached Bombay on 20th October and Fogg was very pleased because they were 2 days early. He told PASSEPARTOUT they had 4 hours free before the next train left for Calcutta at 8 p.m. "I am going to passport office for our stamps. Take this money and go to the shops to buy some fresh clothes. The train leaves at 8. We shall meet at the station at exactly 5 minutes to 8. Fix was listening to their conversation. He ran to the police station to get the arrest warrant, but it wasn't there yet. This made Fix angry. It meant that he would have to keep following Fogg. He could not let him get away, but he could not say anything or arrest him either before the warrant arrived. After buying the clothes they needed, PASSEPARTOUT wandered around the city through colorful, crowded streets. He was amazed to see cows walking around, goats eating rubbish, and rich people sitting in carts pulled by the poor. The air was filled with exotic smells which changed as he went from place to place. Curry, coconuts, flowers, and fresh fruits of all kinds. He walked into a huge market where he saw people buying and selling all kinds of food and clothing. Later, in a different street, he watched a spectacular festival and parade. In the afternoon, the city was much quieter, and people sat on verandas to rest from the heat. Passepartout watched all of this with a smile. He thought Bombay was such an interesting place. Later, in a different part of the city, he saw a beautiful temple with a golden roof. What a beautiful building! He thought, I must go inside. 3 priests suddenly rushed up to him and started shouting. Sit down, said the first priest. Passepartout was confused as they made him sit on a chair while they removed his shoes. You can't come in here, shouted the second priest. Especially wearing shoes, said the third priest. Oh, I am so sorry. I didn't know. The priests angrily pushed and pulled at Passepartout. He was so frightened that he dropped his master's clothes and ran out of the temple as fast as he could. The hard ground hurt his feet, but with the priests chasing after him, he just kept running. Finally, he met Fogg at the railway station, shoeless and without the clothes. When he told his master about the incident, Fogg reacted coldly. I hope that this will not happen again. Fix was sitting a short distance away, pretending to read a newspaper. He was excited to hear Passepartout's story. Passepartout had broken the law, and as Fogg was his master, Fix knew he could have them both arrested. He decided not to follow them to Calcutta but to stay behind, talk to the 3 priests, and arrest Fogg and Passepartout. Later on, as the train left the station, Fix laughed. Ha! I have got you now, Phileas Fogg. Soon you will be in a prison cell. Phileas Fogg and Passepartout sat in the old train as it rattled through the night to Calcutta. They rode in the same carriage with Sir Francis Cromarty, a fellow passenger from the Mongolia. Sir Francis was a gentleman of about 50 with red cheeks and a big white moustache. He had lived in India for many years and was on his way to Benares. Fogg told Cromarty all about his bet and their trip around the world. The gentleman thought the whole thing was very exciting. He knew a lot about the country and its customs, and Fogg found this interesting and useful. You are very lucky, Mr. Fogg. This railway line was completed only a few weeks ago. Luck has nothing to do with it, Sir Francis. I am sure I could make the same trip in the same time, one way or another. They travelled without any problems until the morning of the second day. Then the train whistle blew and the train slowed down and stopped. The conductor announced, "Passengers will get out here." Sir Francis turned to the conductor in surprise. "What do you mean?" "The line ends here, sir. There's another 50 miles to be laid." But the newspaper said the railway was completed. They were wrong, sir. All passengers know they must find their own way from Kohalby to Allahabad. From there, they can catch the next train to Calcutta. The 3 men got off the train and walked towards the village. "What are we going to do now?" said Cromarty. Fogg was a man who would not let anything get in his way. He looked at Cromarty and smiled. "My dear Sir Francis, I have been challenged to get around the world in 80 days, and that's exactly what I am going to do." Passepartout then noticed a man riding an elephant and pointed him out to Fogg. Fogg immediately walked up to him. "May I buy your elephant? It's not for sale." "I'll give you 2,000 pounds. Passepartout and Cromarty were shocked. "You can't buy an elephant," said Cromarty. "It's madness." But Fogg took no notice and gave the money to the man, who happily took it. Another young man standing nearby heard their conversation. "Sirs, I can guide you to Allahabad." Fogg agreed. They bought enough food for the next part of their trip, and by 9 o'clock the elephant and its passengers were marching off into the forest. The three men sat in the seats on the elephant's back, and the young guide on its neck. Their guide was a clever young man who spoke English very well. "I know a quicker way through the forest. It will cut 20 miles out of your journey," he said, pointing away. Fogg agreed to the idea, and they traveled on until nightfall. Then they stopped to rest until the next day. Passepartout shivered with fear as the others were sleeping. He felt butterflies in his stomach as he listened to all the noises around him. The buzzing of insects, the growling of a lion or tiger, the hissing of a snake. But watching his master sleeping like a baby made him feel safe, and finally he too slept. Next day they started at dawn and followed the advice of their guide. "The people in this area are very wild and do not respect the English laws. We must stay away from their villages and towns if we want to be safe." They continued without any problems and were only about 4 hours from Allahabad when they suddenly heard a strange sound coming through the trees. The elephant was frightened and would not go further. The men got off, and the young guide tied the elephant to the tree. Carefully they crept behind some bushes until they could see what was happening. The sound grew louder. Now they could see a line of men marching and playing strange instruments. They were carrying a young Indian woman who was tied to a wooden platform on their shoulders. The young woman was next to a dead body, covered by a large red cloth. Cromarty looked sad. "A Suti." The young guide nodded. "What's that?" asked Fogg. "In India, the dead are burned, not buried. It is the custom here that the wife of a dead man is burnt with him as a gift to the gods." "That's terrible," cried Passepartout. Sir Francis nodded and explained, "These sacrifices are illegal in parts of India controlled by the English, but I am afraid we have no power in this savage territory. Usually, wives choose to die with their husband, but in this case, it is not so," added the young guide. "What do you mean?" asked Fogg. "Everyone knows this woman's story. Her name is AOUDA. She is the daughter of a rich merchant, a well-known beauty with a British education. She was forced to marry one of the old princes of this area who died a few days ago. They'll probably kill her tomorrow morning as part of the funeral." Fogg walked away from the men for a moment. He was deep in thought. Then he suddenly turned to them. "Gentlemen, We have 12 hours to spare. Do you agree that we must help this poor woman?" All the three men shouted yes, but the guide looked worried. "We should better wait till nightfall. We are in no hurry," replied Fogg calmly. The four men hid in some bushes in the forest, watching the line of men take AOUDA inside an old temple. Several guards stayed outside the entrance door. "Well, we can't get in that way," said Cromarty with a sigh. Fogg and his friends carefully made their way round to the back, where there were no guards. The young guide had an idea. "We can make a hole in the temple wall and get in that way. The walls are made of brick and wood. If we take out one brick, the rest will come out easily." They were making good progress when they heard someone shouting from inside the temple. Soon there were more voices, and then footsteps of men rushing out and approaching them. "Quick, we must get out of here," whispered Fogg, and they ran like the wind into the forest. As he ran, Passepartout looked back for a moment. He saw the temple guards looking at the hole in the wall. Later that night, the men sat in the forest, unhappy because AOUDA was still prisoner. "It's hopeless," said Cromarty. "We can't save her now." "Stop. We don't have to be in Allahabad until noon tomorrow," Fogg replied. "But what can you hope to do? Another chance may appear even at the last moment. Let's rest for now." Passepartout could not sleep. He lay awake all night thinking of a plan to rescue AOUDA. At dawn the next day, the men heard the sound of drums and the guards shouting. They saw the priests carrying AOUDA and the body of her husband towards a huge fire in the distance. The men were so alarmed they did not notice that Passepartout was not with them. Fogg grabbed a knife and was about to run to save the poor woman when suddenly everything changed. As the guards placed the platform on the fire, the body of AOUDA's husband stood up and began to moan. He raised his arms, but the red cloth still covered him. He howled and waved his arms like an angry ghost. All the priests and guards turned around and ran into the temple in terror. Cromarty was confused. What on earth is happening? Just then the red cloth fell and there stood Passepartout. He quickly untied the shocked AOUDA. "It's all right. My friends and I are here to help you. Come with me." They ran to the bushes where Fogg and others waited. There was no time for introductions. "Let's go. They will come after us soon." The five of them quickly climbed onto the elephant and rushed off. As they moved away from the cries of the guards, Fogg introduced the party to AOUDA. Then he turned to his faithful servant. "Well done, Passepartout." "Yes, good job, Passepartout," added Cromarty. "Let's get out of here," said the young guide. When they were far enough to feel safe, the group stopped to rest. AOUDA smiled at Passepartout. "Thank you for saving me, Passepartout. You are a hero," said Fogg, and everyone agreed with him. The group traveled on the elephant through the forest to Allahabad. Everyone cheered when they at last saw Allahabad train station. On a wooden platform next to railway line, Fogg thanked their young Indian guide. "Goodbye, my friend. You were kind and brave. Here's your money, and please keep the elephant." The young guide waved goodbye as he rode away. Fogg then spoke to AOUDA. "Now that you are free, what do you want to do?" "Well, I have an uncle in Hong Kong. I could stay with him." "Wonderful. We are going on to Hong Kong after Calcutta. You are welcome to join us, but we must get you some new clothes. The guards will be looking for you. We can't let them recognize you." By 10 a.m., AOUDA was dressed in European style, and they got on to the train to Calcutta. A couple of hours later, the train arrived at Benares, and it was time to say goodbye to Sir Francis. "Goodbye, everyone. Thank you for a great adventure," said Cromarty as the train left the station. Next day, they arrived in Calcutta in the early morning light. Passepartout was excited as Fogg was instructing him to buy the tickets to Hong Kong and some fresh clothes. 2 policemen stopped them. "Are you Phileas Fogg?" "Yes, you are under arrest." The policeman took Fogg, Passepartout, and AOUDA to a small police station with a little courtroom next to it. A policeman pushed Fogg and Passepartout into a small prison cell. The cell was as black as night. "You will appear in front of Judge Obadiah at 8:30, said the policeman as he locked the cell door. AOUDA sat upstairs in the police office waiting. She was so scared that she was shaking like a leaf. The room was silent, apart from the ticking of a nearby clock. She felt that it was her fault the 2 men were in jail. Passepartout was nervously pacing in the cell. "What are we going to do? The ship leaves at noon." "We'll be on it. For now, we must keep calm." "But what's going on? Why are we here?" "Probably because we rescued AOUDA." When they were taken into the courtroom, Fogg realized he was wrong. The 3 priests from Bombay Temple were standing in front of the court telling the judge their story. "That man came into our temple wearing shoes," said the first priest. The second priest held up Passepartout's shoes for the judge to see. "Those are my shoes," cried Passepartout stupidly. "Silence," shouted the judge. Detective Fix sat at the back of the courtroom in a place where Fogg and Passepartout could not see him. As the trial went on, an evil smile appeared on his face. He knew Fogg and Passepartout were in trouble. "What's going to happen to us? Will the judge put us in prison?" whispered Passepartout. "Certainly not." The courtroom was quiet as the judge looked at the 2 prisoners and told Passepartout to stand up. "You have broken the law. You will go to prison for 1 month." Passepartout was so shocked that his face turned as white as a sheet, and Fogg had to hold him to stop him from falling over. The judge then ordered Fogg to stand up as well. "This man is your servant, and you are responsible for him. Because you let him break a law, you will also go to prison for 1 month. The courtroom became very noisy. The judge banged his hammer on the bench and shouted, "Silence in the court! Take these villains away! Next case, please." AOUDA's tears fell like rain. She felt completely helpless. Fix, however, sat smiling. Good, Fogg's trip is over and I have got a whole month to arrange his arrest for the bank robbery too, he thought to himself.